Music is one of the oldest forms of human expression, transcending time, culture, and borders. From the earliest beats of our ancestors to the formation of musical traditions, music has shaped humanity in ways both profound and mysterious. Today, we're going to take you on a journey through the history of music from the beginning of recorded history up through the time of Christ, exploring the origins of music, the early instruments used to make it, and how early humans began to shape the sounds we still recognize today. If you haven't caught it already, our video covering the music of prehistory can be found linked in the description below. Our story begins over 7,000 years ago. The earliest form of music wasn't created in a studio, nor with instruments as we know them today. It was born from the natural environment. Wind rustling through trees, and the sound of animals, and of course the human voice. Humans were surrounded by natural sounds, and it's likely that the first music was vocal. Early humans used their voices to tell stories. Songs were tools for bonding, survival, and even spiritual practices. As humans evolved, so did their ability to create more sophisticated sounds. Around 40,000 years ago, we see the first evidence of musical instruments. Simple flutes made from animal bones and wood have been found in caves across Europe. These instruments weren't just functional. They were often decorated with carvings, revealing that music also held symbolic meaning. They may have been used in ritualistic contexts or as a means of storytelling. As humanity progressed, so did the role of music. By 3000 BCE, civilizations like Sumer, Egypt, and the Indus Valley were flourishing. Music began to play a significant role in religious rituals and courtly life. In ancient Sumer, music was integral to temple worship. The Sumerians had a system of musical notation, and some of the earliest written music we have comes from this period, inscribed on clay tablets. Sumerian music was often accompanied by lyres, harps, and drums. Strings and percussion were central to their musical traditions. Meanwhile, in Egypt, music was also closely tied to religious ceremonies. The Egyptians had a deep connection between music and the divine, and instruments like the sistrum, a type of rattle, were used in temple rites to honor gods and spirits. Far to the east in China and India, music was also emerging as an important cultural force. In China, the early use of stringed instruments like the guqin and percussion instruments paved the way for a sophisticated musical tradition. The roots of Chinese music can be traced back to the Neolithic period. Around 5000 BCE, early Chinese societies began to develop the basic elements of music, using natural instruments carved from stone, bone, and wood. The most notable of these were stone chimes, or king, which were tuned percussion instruments. These instruments, along with flutes made from bone, reflect an early understanding of sound and harmony. Music in this era was deeply tied to ritual and spirituality. It was believed that music had the power to communicate with the gods and spirits, and it was often used in ceremonies to bring about good harvests, health, and prosperity. Fast forward to the Zhou dynasty, around 1046 BCE, when the role of music in China began to take on new dimensions. The Zhou rulers recognized music as a powerful tool for governance. Confucius, who lived during the Zhou period, famously said, "Music is the harmony of the universe," believing that it was essential for maintaining social order. In this era, music was no longer just for spiritual purposes. It became a way to educate, govern, and unify. The elite classes began to use music as a way of expressing cultural identity, and musical training was incorporated into the education of the ruling class. One of the most important instruments of this time was the guqin, a 7-stringed zither that symbolized the intellectual and spiritual ideas of Confucianism. It was played in quiet, intimate settings, and was believed to connect the player with the wisdom of the ancients. The Zhou dynasty also saw the invention of the bamboo flute, an instrument that would become a staple of Chinese music for millennia. Music in the Zhou period was sophisticated with a variety of scales and a system of notation indicating an advanced understanding of musical theory. In India, around 2000 BCE, the origins of classical Indian music began to take shape. Ancient texts like the Vedas suggest that music was deeply connected to religious rites, with instruments like the veena playing a significant role. Around 1500 BCE, the sacred texts known as the Vedas were composed. The most important of these texts, the Rig Veda, contains hymns and chants that were sung in praise of the gods. These hymns, often accompanied by simple instruments like the drum and lute, form the earliest documented music in Indian history. The Sama Veda, one of the four Vedas, is entirely devoted to music and describes the melodic aspects of hymns, which were sung with intricate tonal patterns. This period laid the foundation for Indian classical music, intertwining sound with spirituality and ritual. The development of classical ragas, melodic frameworks used in Indian classical music, emerged during this period. Ragas were believed to have the power to evoke specific emotions and connect listeners with the divine, reflecting the deep spiritual significance of music. By the end of this era, music in ancient India had evolved into an intricate blend of art, philosophy, and devotion. From the Vedic chants to the development of musical instruments and ragas, the foundation of India's rich musical tradition was firmly in place, one that continues to influence music worldwide today. In the Mediterranean, ancient Greece refined the art of music, developing sophisticated instruments like the kithara, a type of lyre, and introducing the concept of musical scales and modes. The Greeks also believed music could influence the soul, and music education was integral to their philosophical traditions. Around 5000 BCE, early Greek societies began to develop basic forms of music. Instruments such as the flute and the lyre emerged, crafted from materials like wood and bone. Music was primarily used in rituals and festivals, dedicated to gods like Apollo, the god of music, and Dionysus, the god of celebration. By the 8th century BCE, with the rise of the epic poets like Homer, music became an integral part of storytelling. Lyric poetry, sung to the accompaniment of a lyre or a kithara, celebrated gods, heroes, and human emotions. Music was seen as a powerful tool for both communication and worship. By the classical period, around 500 BCE, Greek music had grown more sophisticated. Music played a key role in Greek theater, where the chorus would sing and dance to elaborate musical compositions during tragedies and comedies. These performances were an essential part of religious festivals, like those held in honor of Dionysus. Greek philosophers, such as Pythagoras and Aristotle, began to explore the science of music. Pythagoras developed the mathematical relationships between musical notes, influencing the study of harmony and scale. Aristotle, on the other hand, saw music as a means to shape character and emotions, believing that different melodies could invoke different moods. By 0 BCE, music in ancient Greece had evolved into a complex and essential part of culture, intertwining with philosophy, theater, and worship. The Greeks' contribution to musical theory, particularly in scales and harmonics, laid the groundwork for much of Western music that would follow. Across these early civilizations, music played a central role in rituals, celebrations, and daily life. Whether in religious ceremonies, royal courts, or public festivals, music was a universal language, a way to connect with the divine, express power, and communicate emotions. Music was not just a personal activity. It was deeply embedded in the fabric of society. It was an essential tool for storytelling and preserving culture, often used to pass down historical events and myths. As early as 2000 BCE, musicians began developing systems to record their music. The Sumerians invented the first forms of musical notation, and the Greeks expanded on this with their work in music theory, formalizing the study of harmony, rhythm, and the mathematical relationships between sounds. Pythagoras, the Greek philosopher, is famously known for exploring the mathematical nature of music. He discovered the ratios between string lengths and their corresponding pitches, laying the groundwork for the development of scales and harmony. As we reach year zero, music has already evolved into a rich, diverse tapestry of sounds, traditions, and instruments from around the world. The early history of music shows us that it was not just an art form, but a key part of human survival, communication, and spirituality. From primitive percussion and early stringed instruments to the birth of musical notation, these early innovations set the stage for the music that would continue to evolve through the ages. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of music. Be sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the stories of sound and culture.